Dani Phantom is truly a love letter to comic books and superheroes, not just in aesthetics, but also within the show's own lore. Dani has had the same rite of passage as all the other top dogs in spandex, having a buttload of variants and clones running amok in his universe. It's something I never really thought about until the new graphic novel, Fair Game, reintroduced two fan favorite characters into the fold as a little clone duo, which got me thinking, there's a lot of Danis in this series, more than you probably remember. Unless you're a super fan. So I want to run through them all, giving you the lowdown on each and every one, including new lore you might be out of the loop with because Nickelodeon does a poor job marketing the new novels. We'll also tackle all of the suits he's had throughout the show because I think the Gamer one looks really cool and I wanted it in the thumbnail. Let's start with Super Dani and Fun Dani from the Season 2 episode Identity Crisis. Dani's fed up with his personal life and superhero life eating each other alive. Well, really, his personal life is just getting mukbanged by the Phantom persona. He doesn't want to neglect his ghostly duties, as he knows he's the only one well-equipped to keep Amity Park safe. But he also doesn't want his youth to slip by his fingers. He yearns to have a chill weekend with his friends where they can just be normal teenagers. So he turns to the Fenton Ghost Catcher, a device that removes any supernatural presence from those that pass through it, previously used by Dani to free Tucker from Desiree's possession. In its first appearance, Dani actually flew through it and mistakenly split himself into two, though he quickly fused back together. Now desperate for some balance, he resorts to using the Dreamcatcher yet again, this time intentionally splitting himself into two. And it seems as if these intentions cause two distinct personalities to manifest, split between his human half and ghost half. Dani Fenton becomes Fun Dani, a laid-back slacker who basically acts as a stoner, and Dani Phantom becomes Super Dani, whose personality is that of a cookie-cutter superhero, absorbing all sense of responsibility within Dani, and really, all of his good qualities. Fun Dani isn't actually all that fun to be around. Dude's a dick with no moral code, despite his friends' insistence to hang around him. Fun Dani has no manners whatsoever, carelessly littering in a movie theater and lacking any empathy when a manager gets hurt because of it. This is a boy who prioritizes leisure over anything else. When Super Dani needs his help, he's reluctant to answer the call and wants to bail at every inconvenience. Even when he stumbles his way into having powers again without merging with Super Dani, he has no inclination to act as a hero. Meanwhile, Super Dani is all about the superhero lifestyle. He's always on the move, whether it's day or night, presumably lacking any need for sleep or downtime, as he's all ghost. He has zero interest in Dani's usual hobbies, and he really doesn't even treat himself like a person. Instead, he thinks of himself as a symbol of justice, someone who's supposed to never stop fighting evil and aspires hope in the helpless against all odds, always giving 110% to save the day. What makes these two so memorable are their distinct designs, especially Fun Dani, who starts out simple, retaining Dani Fenton's usual look, just with a mullet. The longer hair illustrates how he lacks any ounce of responsibility. He's in no hurry to maintain his shorter hairstyle because he's not as well groomed or hygienic as he normally is. As the episode progresses, Fun Dani gets a snapback that he of course wears backwards. He replaces his usual white and red shirt with one as a crossed out symbol in the center, which once again signifies his disdain for responsibility, as if he's conveying that he doesn't want anyone to ask him for any sort of favor. And he's wearing a green flannel, which is just supposed to add to the laid-back stoner vibes. And it's green because, you know, ghost! Fun Dani also speaks with a stereotypical California surfer dude accent.
Oh man, this is the life. I wish I could stay on this ride like forever.
Super Dani's design is a lot more straightforward, as it's just Dani Phantom with a white blanket tied around his neck and shoulder area, acting as a cape, though his hair and cape are hilariously flowing in the wind at all times, even if it doesn't make sense. It's awesome. Super Dani talks like an old school superhero giving a public service announcement to an impressionable audience, speaking with a confident inflection, projecting his voice with a cadence that sounds as if he's always giving a tender speech. He also uses more expansive vocabulary than the average teenager, with tons of alliteration to lean into that retro hero vibe. What I really find interesting about these two is that they're able to throw Dani's insecurities at one another, and therefore back at himself. Super Dani vocalizes Dani's fears of being a disappointment to his family, that he's falling short as a human being because constantly fighting ghosts means he lacks the time or bandwidth to tackle his normal responsibilities, coming across as a below average student who isn't fully applying himself to his academics.
And that's the sort of irresponsible attitude that makes you such a disappointment to our family.
Meanwhile, Fun Dani once again leans into the idea that Dani Phantom isn't even a person, just a persona, as Fun Dani doesn't even consider him as a part of the family. And sure, in the moment, it's just him being pissy because Super Dani forced him to take on some responsibility. But I really do think this is a peek into Dani's complex, deep-seated feelings towards himself. It's the classic superhero plight. While his powers have led to positives in his life, being Dani Phantom ultimately amounts to taking on a role and a curse.
Hello? Not our family, my family. You're the full-time hero, remember?
While Dani feels obligated to protect the city, it's not something he ever envisioned committing to for the long term. He would love to be able to just be a normal teen without any obligation to the Phantom side of his life. But unfortunately, that's just not in the cards for him, and it's something he struggles with beyond this episode. Eventually, Fun Dani and Super Dani are able to fuse back together and save the day after the gang discovers that the Dreamcatcher has two settings, separate and merge. These two remain iconic to this day. They're the reason this episode is one of the first that pops into my mind whenever I think of the show, and I love how they build off of old material.
What we do here is go back.
Need something to throw on while you draw, study, or sleep? Roundtable Rewind's got you covered. So why not take a stroll down memory lane and subscribe?
No one can tell me what to do.
See you there. The episode Kindred Spirits reveals that Vlad Plasmius has been developing clones of Dani in his pursuit of claiming the life that he believes Jack stole from him. But every time, these clones inevitably fail to hold themselves together and dissolve into ectoplasm, destabilization usually being accelerated by the clones using their powers and engaging in combat. 3 of these clones that we become acquainted with in this episode are the Bedsheet Ghost, the Monster Ghost, and the Tiny Ghost. As the name Bedsheet implies, this clone was hiding its true appearance by using a white sheet as a cloak.
The Ku Klux Klan!
When unmasked, Bedsheet's true appearance is that of a black skeleton with red eyes, along with blue and green highlights, 2 colors often associated with Dani and his powers. Bedsheet is quickly obliterated by Dani after it tried to ambush him at a golf course, though it commanded Dani to change back into a human before its demise, presumably so it could overshadow Dani and either become a complete Dani in the process, or so it could subdue Dani and bring him back to Vlad's lair. Bedsheet didn't seem to sport any of Dani's unique abilities as it just flew around and terrorized people, but it was strong enough to restrain Dani for a moment, even if it didn't take much for Dani to break free. The Monster Ghost was a gray, buff, Frankenstein-esque ghost with a punk aesthetic, sporting a jet black mohawk, spiked collar, and cuffs, with a broken chain dangling from one of them. At a glance, Monster doesn't resemble Dani all that much, but Fenton himself says the ghost looks like him on a bad day. The two share green eyes, and you could argue that his facial expressions are pretty identical to Dani's, especially with how his eyebrows are depicted. When it comes to abilities, Monster has super strength, appearing to be much stronger than Dani, and he has sharp claws that can expand in size. He's also adept at fighting, holding his own and overwhelming Dani to the point that he could only be defeated by the combined strength of 2 half-ghosts. He is by far the most unique of these 3 clones. And then there's Tiny, an unstable clone who specialized in shapeshifting, as it was able to shrink down and zip through Casper High's cafeteria to lure Dani into a trap. The clone is later used to overshadow Dani so that Vlad can collect a DNA sample of him mid-transformation to complete a perfect clone. Tiny was depicted with a perpetual green glow as the edge of his face was eroding into goop. He was so unstable that he couldn't even hold a solid humanoid form. His top row of teeth bared fangs, and he also had a triangular tongue. Tiny doesn't go out in a fight, but instead melts after overshadowing Dani for Vlad's data. This brings us to Vlad's most stable clone thus far, Dani with an eye, aka Danielle Phantom. The most notable difference between her and Dani with a Y is that Danielle is a girl and is about 2 to 3 years younger than Dani, as she's biologically 12 years old. So far, Danielle is the only clone capable of alternating between a human and ghost form like Dani. She shares much of his knowledge, interest, and quick wit, allowing her to outsmart Dani when necessary for her mission. Masquerading as Dani's 3rd cousin once removed, she's originally loyal to Vlad, as he recognized her as his daughter, claiming she was the family he never had but always longed for, prompting Danielle to seek out more validation and praise as it solidifies her as a real person. She was eager to do whatever Vlad requested to earn his approval. Of course, the reality of the situation is that Vlad's stringing Dani along so she can help but complete a perfect male clone of Dani. Plasmius is getting as much mileage out of her as he can before she destabilizes. But as always, this blows up in Vlad's face as he eventually pushes her too far, inadvertently bringing Danielle to her senses.
You could overshadow him for me, dear.
But what if...
You exist
to serve me!
After defeating Vlad and helping Dani evade disproportionate consequences, Danielle goes off on her own to explore the world and carve out her own identity, eventually returning in Season 3's Destabilized, as she's struggling to maintain her physical form and is seeking out a cure whilst trying to avoid Vlad. As to be expected, Plasmius manages to be one creepy step ahead of everyone else and immediately has Dani on his radar as soon as she returns to Amity Park. Vlad tricks Valerie into hunting down Danielle so that he can dissect her and conduct research for another clone, since he's curious as to why Danielle hasn't fallen apart already. Ultimately, Dani and Valerie are able to put their differences aside and save Danielle from Vlad, with Dani stabilizing his clone cousin by using Jack's Ecto-Dejecto, a serum that was intended to cause a ghost to lose power and fall apart, but in classic Fentonworks fashion, it has the opposite effect, as the serum strengthens Ghost instead. Stabilized for the long haul, Danielle parts ways with Dani yet again and never has another prominent role in the show, though she does pop up in Phantom Planet as a part of the fleet of ghosts who help turn the Earth intangible so that the meteor can safely pass through. This isn't the end of Dani with an Eye story, however, as she returns in Fair Game, the second graphic novel that continues Dani's adventures, taking place in an altered timeline that's retconned the events of Phantom Planet in a way that leaves Dani as public enemy number 1, with the public believing the meteor was his fault. Dani and his friends also find themselves in a brand new predicament as they discover ghosts are actually the embodiment of powerful emotions and thus shouldn't be dealt with by being sealed in a thermos and tossed into the ghost zone. That's just putting a band-aid on the problem. So they square off fighting ghosts and instead want to help them, despite the rest of Amity Park feeling emboldened to take matters into their own hands and hunt down the paranormal. Dani, Tucker, and Sam have never been as big of social outcasts as they are now. Dani with an eye returns out of the blue and enrolls in Casper High under the alias of Danielle McCool after overshadowing a faculty member, initially living in the school's boiler room before moving into Fentonworks, hoping she can spend more time with her cousin and enter his social circle for the long haul. However, Danielle struggles to adjust to the new status quo. Describing herself as a vagabond, it's implied she's spent much of her time alone fighting ghosts around the world, taking after Dani, so she's understandably shocked to return to an Amity Park where everyone but Dani is eager to scrap with ghosts. Dani only adds to the tension by comparing Danielle's urge to fight ghosts to the likes of Vlad, isolating her further. Amidst the chaos of Wolf returning to Amity Park and getting hunted by Valerie and the Popular Kids, with Wolf trying to protect the only other surviving ghost of his kind, Laika, Danielle ends up gravitating towards none other than Dark Dani, who at this point is now inhabiting the body of another clone. More on that in a bit. By the end of Fair Game, Danielle distances herself from Dani as she fundamentally disagrees with Dani's new pacifistic approach to ghosts and other enemies, believing Dani shouldn't be letting the likes of Vlad or Valerie off the hook, especially after Valerie nearly killed Laika, running away with Dark Dani. The two form a dynamic identical to a big brother and little sister, which they practically are at this point, and I'm sure their father will be desperate for a family reunion in the near future. Finally, let's talk about Danny Phantom's most infamous villain, who was recently given a second chance at life thanks to time travel shenanigans, Dark Dani. As you may recall, Dark Dani hails from a timeline where Dani cheated on the CAT, leading to Lancer gathering Jack, Maddie, and Jazz to Nasty Burger at the same time Sam and Tucker were enjoying a meal there. Shortly after, everyone was killed in a nasty sauce explosion, leaving Dani orphaned and left with nowhere to go. Nowhere but Vlad's doorstep. Grieving and faced with his own regrets, Vlad fulfills Dani's request to expel his ghost half. Dani's hoping that absolving himself of Phantom will also remove the guilt-riddled emotions that have plagued him since his friends and family died. Unfortunately, with Ghost being the personification of emotions, this worked out a little too well, as the separated Dani Phantom was filled with sorrow and rage, wasting no time separating Vlad's ghost half from his human self and merging with said ghost half. Plasmius being filled with just as much negative emotion. Dark Dani's initial appearance sees him retain his teenage body, but his skin becomes a pale blue-green pigmentation. His eyes shift from green to red. His snow-white hair turns into raging flames. His tongue morphs into that of a serpent's, and he sports fangs. Viewing attachment as a weakness, Dark Dani's first order of business is to kill the human Dani while leaving Vlad alive as a witness who could tell the tale to others. Dark Dani wages a 10-year war against both humanity and the ghost Ghost Zone, determined to destroy everything and everyone in his path as a way to settle the score against fate, taking what he lost away from everyone else. In the future, Dark Dani grows up to be tall and muscular, sporting a goatee and cape like Plasmius. He's mastered all of Dani and Vlad's abilities and has also created a couple of his own, notably the Ghostly Wail, a sonic scream that can devastate the surrounding area and bring any ghost to their knees, eventually mastered by young Dani after being pushed to his limits in the future Ghost Zone.
Get away! Get away!
After learning a clockwork scheme to correct the future and our Dani getting involved in the mayhem, Dark Dani travels to the main timeline to ensure the deaths of Dani's loved ones, but is ultimately bested by his younger self. Dark Dani is sealed away in a Fenton thermos that's kept with clockwork outside of time, but Dark Dani is inadvertently freed by Vlad in the A Glitch in Time graphic novel. Plasmius begs Clockwork for another chance at life following the events of Phantom Planet, only to be rejected and told to live with his mistakes. In a fit of rage, Vlad knocks over the thermos and lets Phantom loose. We have a whole video covering the subplot in the novel, so let's just stick to the basics here. Dark Dani forcefully fuses with Clockwork, but the result is an unstable being, with Clockwork desperately trying to break free. Dark Dani uses his new time powers to return to present-day Amity Park and finish his business, where Dani tries to appease to Dark Dani's emotions, questioning why he's so angry and hell-bent on causing the suffering of others. But it just comes down to the fact that he's compromised of two people who had lost everything, without it necessarily being their fault, even if Vlad responded to his misfortunes in the worst way possible. Ultimately, Dark Dani is still a sad and confused kid. Well, grown-ass man at this point, but you get the idea. After he's defeated by Dani and Vlad, getting separated from Clockwork, he's on the verge of destabilizing. So Vlad decides to atone for his own sins by taking in Dark Dani, allowing him to seek refuge within his body before relocating the Phantom into a new vessel, another clone of Dani. Dark Dani returns in fair game, acclimated to living as the son Vlad never had, though he's very overwhelmed by Vlad's smothering, still despising the man, and has recently decided to run away. His new appearance feels like a mix of fun Dani and Dani after removing his powers in Phantom Planet. Longer, mostly black hair with a white streak in the front, red eyes, a black shirt, a red tie similar to Vlad's bow tie, and Dani's outfit in Masters of All Time. He has purple pants and a green long sleeve shirt, another nod to Masters of All Time. Even with this new vessel, Dark Dani still seems to be affected by existing outside of its original timeline and is not fully stable, claiming it's taking all of his energy to maintain his current form. Something that I imagine will be resolved in future books, as Valerie still has possession of a time medallion, which is the only thing that would serve as a viable solution for Dark Dani. It's currently unknown if Dark Dani is able to use his powers or go ghost, as he remains human throughout the novel and fatigues himself whenever he tries to fight or even raise his voice.
We're gonna trap him in a kid body, the thing that he's trying to avoid the most and the thing that triggers him the most, and let's see what happens. And I'd like to think that it makes him a bit more kid-like, whether he wants to admit it or not. It's like him desperately trying to regain this cool factor that is just never gonna happen from him. It's like Fetch, it's never gonna happen.
While Gabriella Epstein, the author of these new books, intends for Dark Dani's new situation to be the worst case scenario for himself and Vlad, as Dark Dani is stuck in a body he resents, likely for the trauma associated with it and feelings of weakness or inadequacy, I have a much different takeaway for Dark Dani. Currently, he's no longer a real threat, and he's essentially been given a second chance at life as he's returned to the age that he was when he lost everything. To me, Dark Dani's new arrangement allows him to reclaim his youth, take advantage of the years that he thought he lost. His once sadistic tendencies have been severely bogged down as he acts as a moody, rebellious teenager who's searching for an appropriate outlet to unleash his rage. He hits it off with Danielle pretty quickly as the two bond over their hatred for Vlad and Danielle's confusion over Dani's new moral code. But by the end of fair game, the two form their own sibling duo and run away together, creating a new faction in the brewing war between humans and ghosts. Hybrids who don't want to fight ghosts with their words, but their fist. The extent of his influence over Danielle has yet to be fully explored, as I imagine he'll act more as an anti-hero than a villain moving forward, given how they've added depth to his character, but I still think he'll cause some trouble for Dani and the gang in future installments. Once again, pick up these books if you want to see more Dani Phantom, people. This continuation has been the closest we've gotten to a completely serialized Dani Phantom that's able to tell a comprehensive story arc with no Monster of the Week episodes getting in the way of the plot, and I'd love to see them be able to make more. Finally, let's tackle Dani's different suits throughout the show. Like every big hero, Dani has a catalog of cool costumes that only appeared once or twice before getting sent to might be in a video game purgatory. There's the original jumpsuit that was prominent in the first season, mostly black with white gloves, shoes, belt, and collar to complement its hair. After the offensive memory blank, this bad boy got a drippy ass emblem slapped on his chest, a D that forms a P on the inside. Despite how simple it is, I always thought this was an incredible addition that went a long way to give Dani a more distinct identity. I also adored how they added this emblem to the theme song, but as a kid, it made me refuse to watch any season 1 reruns because for some reason my dumb adolescent brain thought the lack of a logo on his chest made the episodes inferior or dated. Yeah, I don't know. I was a weird kid. There's the gaming avatar from Teacher of the Year, aka the Doom suit. After overshadowing his computer, entering the doomed video game and possessing his avatar, Dani wears a blue visor and a Tron-esque cyber suit with a D on the center of his chest, which probably inspired the emblem becoming a permanent addition on his costume, as this episode was in season 1 before Memory Blank. This is my favorite look for Dani, and it's purely because of aesthetics. Its normal look before he takes over his avatar is pretty dope too. There's the iconic ectoskeleton battle suit from Rainstorm, a relatively large silver mech with a green Fenton Works logo that multiplies the pilot's physical abilities by 100, including Dani's ghost powers. Though the trade-off is that it is exhausting to use, taking a dangerous toll on the pilot, at least until Vlad got his hands on it, finding his own workaround. When Dani goes ghost in the mech, it adopts the color scheme of his jumpsuit along with his emblem, though it does retain its splashes of green. Sadly, the suit got destroyed by Jazz to prevent Vlad from getting any further use out of it. Good call, Jazz. There's a short-lived medieval battle suit from Beauty Mart, which sees Dani wearing spiked gauntlets, a single shoulder pad, and a belt from a knight's armor over his jumpsuit. It's really just a disguise and he doesn't fight in for long, but it still looks pretty cool. Kingdom Hearts gave me an affinity for designs that mix armor with normal clothes. If you want to call these fits normal. There's the X-23 booster rocket from Flirting with Disaster and Phantom Planet, an extremely powerful jetpack, accompanied with a helmet that brings Dani one step closer to his dreams of being an astronaut. To the point, but still pretty dope. There's Grim Reaper Dani from Control Freaks, which sees Dani briefly hypnotized by Freak Show and performing for his circus. All aesthetics, yet I still believe this look is up there when it comes to iconic imagery in the series. There's Ninja Dani from Infinite Realms, a suit he wore as a disguise to get the jump on Vlad in Asia, as the madman was trying to use the map of destiny to uncover a new fate. And finally, as an honorable mention, there's Dani, post-Ghostly Whale, from The Ultimate Enemy, reverting back to his human form while remaining in his black jumpsuit. Something about the black hair with the black jumpsuit just goes so hard to me, and I really wish they found a way to incorporate it more in the series, at least whenever he used the Ghostly Whale. Am I the only one who feels like this? Which version of Dani Phantom is your favorite? Which costume of his is the coolest? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and keep the conversation going by giving me a follow at OstricFox and at Roundtable Vids on Twitter and Instagram. Shout out to Jakey Bones for the amazing thumbnail. Be sure to give him a follow over on Twitter, throw him a commission, and if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, subscribe to the Roundtable notifications on so you never miss a video, and I hope you guys have an amazing day. Peace!